Morning, everyone. I know it's right before lunch. The goalie program, it as George said, was a ADM initiative, and it was long overdue. We did all the other things with the half ice and the cross ice, and they focused on the players, and we never really looked at the goaltenders, right down to the fact when you take a look at right sizing the nets. That's made a huge difference from a goaltending perspective, the quick change equipment, those kinds of things. Phil O'Sara is the USA manager, ADM manager for the goaltending program. I said I'd help him in Michigan. Don't know how much help I've been. It really started with a slogan, and a lot of the slogan is 51 and 30. What that means is they want to have 51% of NHL minutes played by USA Hockey goaltenders by the year 2030. How do you get to that from sitting around and noodling on a piece of paper? Well, that's kind of what we did. Some of the things that worked out pretty well this past year was identifying the top goaltenders. And that, if you look at what you're trying to do with the program, you're trying to get more kids to play. That becomes the biggest challenge no matter what position. But certainly with goaltending, I think it's been a situation where it was not part of the original mandate when we looked at USA Hockey's cross ice program, which has been very, very successful. But it was all about just getting on the ice and playing, which it should be. So then what happens is, okay, who's going to play goal? It was almost by default. So we're trying to add the fun back to playing goal. And that's kind of be my focus over this next year. I'll be stepping down at the end of this upcoming season. So anybody who's interested in maybe helping Phil roll this out further after this season, I'll be part of that process in vetting and getting candidates looked at and see who wants to really be part of it. The IDing and tracking of the top goaltenders, that's been successful. But again, that's only one piece. It's important for USA Hockey to know who the best goaltenders are, track their progress, see where they're coming from, what's making them successful, those kinds of things. To me, the biggest piece, and the piece that's been missing that isn't now, is coaching the coaches. We've run clinics sporadically, admittedly, not broad-based enough. But what comes first? Can you get broad-based buy-in without a coaching education program? Well, now they have that. I've told Phil it'll be his legacy piece, getting that implemented for USA Hockey and for Michigan, regardless how successful he is in his career moving forward. And what that means is, as part of your coaching education program, we now have modules for goaltending. So at the association level, coaches can at least dip their toe in the water to the extent they want to, in terms of understanding the basics of goaltending. Again, just like the levels 1 through 5, this is you have the bronze, silver, and gold. So you can get some pretty in-depth goaltending coaching if you're so inclined, even if you don't want to be a goalie coach, because that's part of what we see here. The goaltending, the top goaltenders get identified. The goaltenders who are qualified to coach, we'll put it that way, it becomes a business pretty quickly. So right away it becomes a pretty narrowly defined aspect of, okay, we know who the top goaltenders are, these are the goalie coaches, they're in business, and that's kind of, again, what gets left out largely is that association-based piece where we need to have people involved at the associations who want to be the, call it goaltender coordinator for the association. Now we have that platform, I believe, through the CEP. So that's going to be my focus this year. I'll be working with Jack Witt, being as many of the coaching programs as I can be, to talk about the goaltending, to get coaches involved. We went through a pilot program. The first year it was successful, but it's also really arduous because it's like, come to us instead of us go to the associations. But if you have enough interest within your association, and somebody can, kind of rise to the forefront and be that person as the coordinator for the association, now we have a way to connect everything. So that's kind of the, high level view of it. To me, the success of the program overall, if you go back to the slogan, 51 and 30, it is really based in what is starting now with the goaltending curriculum. I think if that's successful, then if we have more coaches aware of what goes into providing for a goaltender in practice, for instance, then you have an opportunity to make the position fun again. Part of the reason I'm leaving it after 4 years instead of the original 5, part of it's personal, part of it's pragmatic, and part of it's philosophical. Maybe I'm just getting old and crabby. Some would say that happened a long time ago. But I think we've coached a lot of the fun out of the position. I can see kids being able to do certain things, make certain moves, but they're isolated from the game of hockey. And I think a lot of that isolation begins right at practice. We have specialized guys on the ice. You got 10, 11-year-olds sliding around, and they can do fantastic things that we never had to do even at the NHL level when I played a long time ago. But are they integrated in the game of hockey, or are they just goaltenders? So to me, the challenge is a little bit deeper than just let's get a bunch of kids out there and get numbers. We have to give kids a reason to play goal again in numbers, because that's the only way you drive the position to get 51 and 30, because you need more kids playing to get the elite kids to rise to the top. The fewer options you have, of course, that just limits the ability to do just that. So I'm excited about it. I was excited when I started 3 years ago. Frustrated at times, certainly. But again, I think if we had started the cross ice and the half ice at the same time from the goaltending perspective, we'd be that much further along. If we had had the right size nets for our half ice games, I think we'd be that much further along. We didn't. If we had had the goaltending coaching modules set up when the program started, we'd be that much further along. We didn't. We do now. That's the important element to me, because we're going to do a program. Our first one this year is at Ferris State, August 10th to the 12th. It's for birth years 03 and 04 goaltenders. Goaltending symposium will be going on at that same time. We'll get to try a lot of this stuff out. Parents and coaches welcome on the ice at the time. Really important to provide context. Again, not so the position could be overcoached, but so parents aren't afraid of their son or daughters wanting to be goaltenders, and coaches not wanting to just say that's for the goalie coach, because there are certain elements that are obviously just based on being a goaltender, but you're still part of a team. It's a team game, and I think that less isolation, more integration, that's what this will provide when we look at the modules. And with that, I think the numbers will go up, and we will be able to keep striving for that same goal. So with that, that's kind of a summary, quick. Let's talk about goalies. Let's talk about goaltending. Any questions? The question was, their association, they have players cycle through and play goaltending. They're goalies. Everyone takes a turn. We've all heard it. We've all seen it. Is that the right thing to do? I say absolutely. But then what happens is get to 10U, and all of a sudden we don't have goaltenders because they opted out at that particular point. That's what we're hoping to avoid. Right? We want to develop as many goaltenders as possible. I think you have to do it that way. I think it's the right way to do it. Expose the position to as many people as possible. But again, we've got to make it fun again too. And I think a big piece of it for the half ice, I've seen it be, I wouldn't say appreciated, because goalies are seldom appreciated, but I've seen the payback of having those smaller nets, the right size nets in the half ice games, make it so much better for the kids because they can feel part of it. They can have some success. Good point. I'd use them as much as you can. Of all the things that came out that I'm a big fan of, it's the right size nets, and especially if you're doing station-based. You at least you can keep your goalies at the 2 stations, if you will, the 2 shooting stations or whatever you want to do with those right size nets, and have the big nets elsewhere. I big believer. Wish I would have thought of it.
So if you have other questions, can you go up to one of the microphones, because then it'll actually get recorded into the, or you can go visit them. Come on up, because then it'll get recorded.
Oh, there you go. You're recording. All right. Take 2. All right.
Okay, so in our association, we're looking to put the cross ice creases in the zones to help with goalie development. We had a big debate on our board because some of the guys thought they were unnecessary. We didn't need them because goalies use different things for reference. How important is that, and would you recommend that we put that while we have our ice out, before we put the stripes back down, to put the creases in?
Yeah, I think it's the orientation part from a crease standpoint. Again, from a goaltending standpoint, I think it is important. There's other ways to do it. They do have some paint that you can use as needed if the board just goes, and that can scrape off pretty easily, the spray paint. There's other ways to do it. I think it is important. Like you said, it's not full orientation if you're going half ice, cross ice, especially from the cross ice standpoint. But I do think that there's, from a crease standpoint and a depth management standpoint, at least it's important. So I would say yes, push for it, absolutely, and tell them it's not as bad as playing in a curling rink. So, right? So, but yeah, those things are important. Yes.
It's funny, this gentleman over here. So I've been coaching 8 and under goalies for the last 3 years, and I've learned a lot.
Yes.
About making sure their brains don't work the way an older boy's or girl's brain works.
So you got to keep it fun. What you want to do is figure out who likes being a goalie. So I call myself an 8U goalie coach, but I'm really an 8U encourager. So I go out there and I pretend I'm coaching, but what I'm really doing is trying to encourage them to enjoy the position. During the summer, the kids that are going up to squirt, I'll take any kid out to a stick and puck session and actually coach them so they're ready for the hockey season. But their little 8-year-old brains they can't get it. But some kids like it, some kids don't, and you want to figure out who likes it. The other point I'd make is with regard to a crease, I've got a big fat, about a 2-inch wide red magic marker, and you can just go out on the ice and make a crease anywhere you want it, and it'll stay there for most of a practice. So probably Hobby Lobby, you can buy those things.
Appreciate it, great stuff. And the thing about that I found as well, going back to 8U goaltenders, you'll see the kid that does it once and okay, you don't make them do it, but then there'll be other kids that say, can I do it again? And that's what you have to identify pretty quickly. Yes.
You'll know who likes it because by the end of the season, their dads will have bought them equipment.
Yeah, well, that's we do know, no matter what, that is a challenge for the position. It's expensive, but you can give them good tips on where to buy and those kinds of things as well. And they don't have to have all matching stuff. Then that gets great. It's part of the fun is the equipment actually, but yeah, it's if you can identify the kids. Usually the kids that don't want to do it, they'll identify themselves pretty quickly too. I would I would make it, I would have everybody try it at least once, even if it's in a drill or practice format. But if the kids are adamant they don't want to do it, gravitate towards the kids who are wanting to do it. Your rotation goes from 10 kids down to 4 kids for the season, and make sure those kids, you kind of push them into that position from there. Yes?
Hi, so you mentioned the right size of the nets for the 8U. Which
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of. I've got a couple of questions. So, do you still feel that they're right size when they're 9 and 10? Because now we're asking a 9-year-old who's not much bigger than an 8-year-old to man the same size net that some 6'5" NHLers are manning. So that's question one. And two, do you think that that might contribute to some kids dropping out of the position at 9 and 10? Because now they're not having as much success.
Right.
Because with the smaller nets, they can.
Right. It's a good point. I wish we could have it like, let's start working on that, all the engineers, where we could have a graduated goal post, right? When we were little kids, you had nets, street hockey nets that you could move up higher and lower and smaller, collapsible. That would be a perfect situation, because I can see that certainly being an issue, what you just mentioned. You're successful at 8, and at 9, all of a sudden the net's huge. Yeah, there should be something in between. There isn't right now. But again, I think that the change, you go to a blue puck to a black puck, so there's some things that the shooters are having to deal with as well. Spatially, they're having to deal with as well. So everybody is making kind of a leap up at that same age at the same time. Hopefully that's helpful, especially if they feel they're part of the team and not just a goalie. Appreciate it. Look forward to it. Yes.
I'm a registrar for our local association, and
Yes.
whenever we do register a team, there's a big pop-up question about, we would like to identify a goalie. So I'm always coming back to the managers or the coaches, do you have a goalie? But they always come back, what do you do with this? So do you know, or do you know someone who would?
What's that?
When we mark a player as a goalie in the USC Hockey
Yes.
registrar, it goes into a magic distribution list, or what happens with that?
Maybe George would have,
I think that's part of your tracking.
part of the tracking in terms of
yeah.
position and where,
Right.
just the numbers, right?
So it's just statistics, or there's actual development going on with those people identified?
The identification becomes at the higher levels once you get to development camps and things like that. That's where just tracking in terms of straight numbers, that would be a USA Hockey MAHA tracking number in terms of just percentage of kids enrolled being goaltenders, those kinds of things.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much it's used at this point. I think
It's not yet.
they do want to use it more for, notifying them of development opportunity. But I think last
Correct.
year was the first year we ever even tried to even trap that,
Right.
and we were more successful with some places than others. So,
Yeah.
so Darren, just maybe a little bit more on the fair state, because it's really more of it's more of a coaching opportunity or a development coordinator opportunity for these associations, and probably a really good opportunity for them to get somebody up there who's interested in coaching goalies. I mean, there's a level 4 on the line there for
Yeah,
them
there's a
as
level
well.
4. It'll go through as much as the silver level of the coaching education program. Coaches will be on the ice at symposium that you're talking about going on at the same time. So they'll be on ice, off ice, and we're working with goaltenders on the ice, seeing how they're trained, how you look at a practice plan, how you don't have to specify time for goaltenders if you don't have the time. There's ways to work on your drills that can also incorporate elements of goaltender training without making it a specialty position. those kinds of things. So again, that's August. I think Phil said there'd be
What's the
stuff coming
dates on
out.
that? The dates are
August, they're August 10th to the 12th.
10th through the 12th.
Yep. Ferris State. That's
Registration is open. You have
Registration's
to
open.
register online. Seating is limited, right, Jim?
agenda will be set out. I think he said by August 6th after registration.
Coaches who want to attend can register on the USA Hockey website, just like for any coaching clinic. It's called a high-performance clinic instead of a level 4, but it's available on the website to register. And there's no restriction on who attends.
So we're excited, and from that we'll learn and tailor what we're able to bring to the associations throughout the year. Because again, like you said, we need to not just have the goalies, we got to have them stay goalies, but we got to make it fun up front for them. All right, to lunch. Thanks.